This is a CBC News special presentation.
Andrew Furey stunned the province with an announcement no one saw coming.
It is with a heart full of pride and hard-earned confidence in the future of Newfoundland and Labrador that I must now move on.
Creating a chance for a cabinet minister to move up, John Abbott ran to be premier in 2021 and lost to Furey. The bureaucrat instead became an MHA and cabinet minister. Now, with more experience, he's once again trying for the top job.
This is a time that we need strong leadership in this province, and I believe I am that leader.
The other John running is John Hogan. He's a lawyer who spent more than a decade behind the scenes in the Liberal Party. He helped Furey win 4 years ago. In the last election, he was on the ballot, defeating the Conservative leader to become an MHA and quickly landing in cabinet.
With my experience and calm and steady hand.
For more than 2 months, they've crossed the province, campaigning, signing up almost 14,000 members. It's those Liberals who will now decide who becomes the next leader and premier of this province. Who will deal with the uncertainty of Donald Trump's tariffs and finalize a multi-billion-dollar deal with Quebec. Today, we find out who becomes the 15th premier of Newfoundland and Labrador. Good afternoon and welcome to the JAG Soundhouse in downtown St. John's, and welcome to the Liberal Leadership Convention. I'm Peter Cowan. We're less than half an hour away from finding out who will become the next Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador. And let's take a look at what's happening on the stage right now, because each of those candidates, John Hogan and John Abbott, are having a little friendly question and answer section with the party. Questions like, what's your favorite campaign food when you're out on the trail? And so the big question, though, of course, is which of these are going to become Premier? And that question has actually already been decided. Voting ended at noon today, so we're all just now waiting to find out what those results are. And waiting with me and to offer a few insights, I've got a panel of some political veterans here in order to walk us all through it. Steve Crocker is a minister, and you've had a bunch of different portfolios. And with us as well is Megan Reynolds, who is the former president of the Liberal Party. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
It's great to be here.
So as we're looking at the very final moments of the campaign, I want to get your take. Start with you, Megan. What do you make of what has been a fairly friendly campaign between these two?
Yes, it has. It's been a friendly campaign. John Abbott, this is obviously his second kick at the can, so to speak. He ran in 2020 in the leadership with Andrew Furey. And at that time, he was relatively unknown, and he garnered 34% of the vote. John Hogan, very well known to the party, and he, in my view, has garnered a lot of the key support within the party, both with some key caucus members that have endorsed him, as well as party volunteers. So I'm interested today in seeing...
Does that translate into votes?
Does that translate into votes, exactly.
And speaking of folks who are supporting John Hogan, Mr. Crocker, you've been supporting him. Just briefly, what's your take on this campaign?
Yeah, I think it's important. You said in your opening it's been a friendly campaign, and I think that's something I'm taking away from this campaign, and I hope continues forward as we go towards a general election. I think people in Newfoundland and Labrador, people in Canada in general, right now want to see that change of tone in politics, where we've seen all kinds of slogans and all kinds of memes, but it's time for that get back to the brass tacks of the issues. And I think that's what we've seen in this campaign. We've seen debates where the two gentlemen vying to be premier today actually debate the issues without taking personal shots. And I think it's extremely important that we continue that going forward. And that's what I'll take away from this campaign.
Well, we'll come back to you for more insights as we continue, but let's head down to the floor because my colleague Carolyn Stokes has been chatting with folks on the floor there, and in about a minute or so before we might get the results, I want to check in with you, Carolyn. What are you hearing?
Well, Peter, there's a lot of excitement here on the floor here today. There are a few hundred Liberals who came in from around the province, and this is a pretty flashy production compared to the last time Liberals picked a premier in this province. Of course, that was back in 2020 when Andrew Furey won the Liberal leadership leadership. That was during COVID times. It was practically an empty room, a virtual convention. So this is very different from that experience. But one thing is the same is one of the candidates, John Abbott, is running in this race, and he also lost to Fury in the last Liberal leadership race. So he's hoping that today will be very different for him as well. But for the Liberals here behind me, the stakes are very high. Yes, they're going to be picking a premier for this province, but they're also picking their leader, the person who's going to bring them into the next election, and they want to pick a winner. So it'll be interesting to see the level of support for whichever winning John gets this today, and how unified Liberals are behind that man who they hope will deliver them the next provincial election. Back to you, Peter.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Carolyn will have some guests as we getting a little bit of reaction throughout our show today. But we want to explain the voting because it is the Liberals who will decide who the next leader is, and it's not a straight-up most number of votes system. Here's how it works.
It's the approximately 14,000 people registered with the Liberal Party who will decide who becomes the next leader. But it's not just as simple as who gets the most votes. Each of the 40 districts are given 1,000 points. The votes are counted in each district, and the points are distributed based on those votes. So if each candidate gets half the votes in a district, they'd each get 500 points. This gives smaller districts with fewer members the same weight as bigger ones. The winner needs to get more than 20,000 points to become the next Liberal leader and premier.
System works. One of the key things, though, is how many people actually vote. Steve, you have some insights there. How many votes are you hearing?
Yeah, we're hearing about a 75% voter turnout, 10,000 voters, which is, you know, in our two previous races, and I think most races we see for leaderships of parties today, you know, it's around 60%, but this one is very close, I'm hearing, to 75% voter turnout.
But it is fewer voters than the last two races.
Yeah.
Last time around, about 21,000 people voted. This time, you know, we're probably 11 or 12 based on your math there.
Yeah, but I think the thing we got to remember here, this was a condensed process. Quite frankly, the last campaign started, I know Megan and I actually were involved back then on a campaign, and, you know, the campaign actually started in February and ended in August. And the one before that was a 6-month campaign.
Yeah, that was a marathon back when Dwight Ball was
right, and the other one was interrupted by COVID. So that one became a marathon as well. So this one was condensed, but, you know, very happy to see 14,000 people sign up to and register to vote in this process, and I think it bodes well for our party.
And explain to me, why do this process, you know, actually, hold on, it sounds like we may have the president of the parties coming up on stage. So let's take a look at the stage as Ashley Powerstack comes up. She is the president of the party, and she's got that magic envelope in her hands that has the results that we've all been waiting for, which is how all of those votes have actually been tabulated. It's all online voting, so no big counting. But let's actually hear from, this is right. This is the Chief Returning Officer. So we're going to hear from all of this. Let's just listen in live quickly.
Thousands of elections in both Canada and internationally, they are considered the industry leader in electronic voting. IntelliVote has provided electronic voting services to all major political parties in over 25 leadership elections, including the 2013 and 2020 Liberal Party of Newfoundland and Labrador elections. For the purposes of this election, electronic voting was enabled to allow ballots to be cast 24 hours a day, starting April 24th until 12 p.m. today, on the internet or by phone from anywhere in the world. Electronic voting was overseen by Power & Associates Chartered Professional Accountants. Tasks and processes were performed on the voting system, as well as the results generation for the leadership election using a control-based audit approach. After the close of voting today, IntelliVote and Power & Associates, in the presence of myself as Chief Returning Officer and scrutineers from both campaigns, finalized the voting results and then allocated the votes to assign points in each electoral district, the process used in this electoral leadership election, rather. The ballots were counted in accordance with the following procedure. Results of the votes were calculated by a count of raw votes. Each provincial district was allocated 1,000 points for a province-wide total of 40,000 points. Votes were allocated and counted in the provincial district where the registered voter resides. As we had 2 candidates only, there will be a winner on the first ballot as determined by the candidate with at least 20,000 points, the number of points required to be declared the new leader. I'd now like to call upon Ashley Power-Stack, President of the Liberal Party of Newfoundland and Labrador, to say a few words and announce the winner of the 2025 Liberal Party of Newfoundland and Labrador leadership election. The envelope.
This is the key moment that we've all been waiting for. Let's see what those results are.
What a day. Thank you, Keith, acting as our Chief Returning Officer. All right, folks, the moment has arrived. After an exciting and energizing leadership race, thousands of passionate Liberals across Newfoundland and Labrador have made their voices heard. 13,850 registered voters, 40 districts, each carrying equal weight, a process rooted in fairness, democracy, and unity. We've had 2 exceptional candidates, individuals who represent the very best of who we are as a party. They campaigned with integrity, vision, and a deep love for this province, and we thank them both for their leadership and commitment. Thank you, John and John. And today, we look to the future because the person we announce now will not only lead our party, they will become the Premier Designate of Newfoundland and Labrador. So, without further delay, I will announce the results of the 2025 Newfoundland and Labrador Leadership Convention. Drum roll, please. In second place, with 22.52% of the vote, John Abbott. And in first place, with 77.48% of the vote, John Hogan. Please join me in congratulating the new leader of the Liberal Party of Newfoundland and Labrador and the next Premier of our province.
Race, he was behind the scenes helping Andrew Furey win, but now the top job is his. John Hogan has gone from a backroom player to the man who defeated a Conservative leader in the last election to cabinet minister, and now he can add 15th Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador to his title. He's got a big job in front of him. He's got to pick a cabinet, he's got to get a budget passed, and then he's got an election to run, all within the next year. He didn't reveal many policies during the campaign, a few small promises to create a standalone ministry for seniors, as well as one for families and affordability, expand shingles vaccine coverage. So on some of the bigger issues, we're going to have to see how he decides to move forward, how he'll deal with some of those issues like cost of living, healthcare, and negotiations with Churchill Falls deal. Let's head back to that podium. Let's listen in as John Hogan delivers his first speech as Premier Designate.
Woo! Thank you. Thanks, everybody, so much. And let me start by saying how grateful I am to my family, my wife Jill and Maggie and Jack. He wants to get down. They really embraced this opportunity and made this experience even more meaningful than it ever could have been. And I couldn't have done it without them. It's nap time. My kids and their entire generation are what drive me to ensure Newfoundland and Labrador lives up to its full potential. And so they can too, right here at home in our province. Thank you to my parents and my sisters, their families, my wife's family for their tremendous support, including countless hours that they dedicated to this campaign. And it really was a team effort. I'm so grateful for the incredible team and amazing volunteers from all across the province. I can't thank you enough for all the hard work you've done. I want to acknowledge my colleague, John Abbott, and thank him for a great campaign. And I'm so glad to be joined here today by our Liberal caucus colleagues. It's been a real pleasure visiting communities in your districts over the past couple of months, especially the rural regions of our province. And I'm proud now to be a leader of such a strong group of representatives. And together, we'll work every day to deliver real economic and social benefits to every corner of our province. I want to say thank you to our friend and my friend, Premier Andrew Furey. Second to none is his leadership and service and commitment to this province, and I've been proud to serve Newfoundlanders and Labradorians alongside of him for the past 4 years. But it's an incredible honour to be chosen to lead the Liberal Party of Newfoundland and Labrador and to be the next Premier of this province. I recognize it comes with heavy responsibility, lead with integrity and humility, to listen and to work tirelessly for the people of our province. And I'm committed to giving this everything I have, every single day. We will build a stronger, fairer, and more prosperous Newfoundland and Labrador, where families can grow and thrive. And I want Newfoundlanders and Labradorians to know I've got your back. I put my name forward for this position because I know our province is at an important crossroads. I have a clear vision of what must be done to accomplish our goals, to balance our priorities, and harness our opportunities. To lead a party that understands that this is a time for steady, informed leadership, with fresh ideas and a practical, positive approach. During this campaign, I've had the opportunity to travel around our beautiful and vast province and meet with community members, community leaders in the place that they call home. And every community is different. Different strengths, different challenges, but there's one undeniable commonality, no matter where we went, is that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are incredibly proud of their communities. And they're fiercely committed to making them stronger. And as I've heard, there's no question there are challenges affecting everyone right now. We're facing a new relationship with our neighbours south of the border, and we must be prepared on how that will impact us here at home. Families continue to struggle with affordability. There's frustrations with our healthcare system. And our seniors who built this province and contribute so much still need some more of our help. Under my leadership, a Liberal government will continue to work hard on these and other important priorities like education, economic growth, and ensuring our communities are safe. We will continue to build an inclusive province where everyone can succeed, and we will take meaningful steps towards reconciliation with our Indigenous partners. We're going to continue to support workers and local businesses and champion our valuable natural resources. And we will be there for you and your families through any impacts of tariffs or trade wars. We will continue to advance the plan to transform our healthcare system, our roadmap based on the Health Accord, until all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have access to primary health care and seniors can age well at home and with dignity. With our large land mass and tiny population, there's no one-size-fits-all solution for any of us. I'm committed to working with all our communities, all levels of government, to address our challenges. And as I said to people throughout this campaign, your problems are my problems. Your priorities are my priorities. I'm focused on unlocking the immense opportunities we know are right here at our doorstep. And as a province, we're so rich in natural resources, highly skilled and hardworking labour force. We know Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are one of a kind. We're always there for our neighbours, and we've seen it time and time again. When times get tough, we stand up, we stand together. But we're here at the beginning of a new era. The MOU with Hydro-Quebec is an extraordinary opportunity, and one that can transform not just the fortunes, but the entire spirit of our province. As we know, we already have 2 strikes against us on the Churchill River. The original contract, a bad deal that's haunted us for decades, and the second strike, the unbelievable cost overruns of Muskrat Falls. The Churchill River is an unparalleled natural resource. It's an opportunity for us and future generations, and we cannot afford a third strike. It's an opportunity worth more than $225 billion. Think of the doors this will open for us, our children, our grandchildren, and we know how important it is to get this deal across the line, because we can't afford that third strike, and we will negotiate final agreements to ensure we extract the best deal for our province and our people right here in Newfoundland and Labrador. In the meantime, we need to prepare the workforce for the jobs that will be created by new projects, prepare our communities in Labrador for the impacts of resulting growth and development, and prepare all of Newfoundland and Labrador for the opportunities that await us. Our work also includes effectively advocating for Newfoundland and Labrador on the national and international stage and creating new economic partnerships. I want to congratulate Prime Minister Mark Carney and his team on a well-fought federal campaign. The Prime Minister has already demonstrated a strong willingness to listen to the concerns of Newfoundland and Labrador, and I'm very much looking forward to strengthening our province's place on Team Canada and ensuring we receive our fair share now and always. And finally, as the new leader and on behalf of our Liberal caucus, rest assured the Liberal Party will be ready to win the next provincial election. We have a strong team. We'll balance fresh ideas and enthusiasm with experience and stability. And we're ready to fight for our economy, to deliver health care for access to all, to provide support for seniors, and increase our focus on families and affordability. These are the things that are important to you, and they're important to our caucus. We are on the right path forward, and we all know there's still work to be done and challenges to overcome. But I'm ready. Our team is ready. Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are ready. Let's get to work. Let's go.
And that is John Hogan delivering his very first speech as Premier Designate. If you're just joining us, this is live coverage of the Liberal Leadership Convention here in downtown St. John's. John Hogan with a very impressive victory, 77.4% of the total votes, or I should say points that were available, compared to 22% for John Abbott. Now, we're going to get a chance to speak to both of these men before we're done our broadcast. Lots of questions for them, but some questions for our panel here as well. What do you make of that? Like 77%, it's a pretty commanding victory there.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the ground game that that John Hogan must have had on his campaign because the way that it's structured, it's not that you can like focus on a couple like St. John's districts.
You can't sign up all your friends and family in St. John's and call it a day.
Exactly.
You gotta travel.
You have to have province-wide support, and obviously such a resounding percentage must mean that he had a lot of support province-wide, which bodes well for John Hogan.
Steve, what do you make of it?
Yeah, well, pretty pleased at the moment, to be honest. I think it shows, to Megan's point, it shows organization, it shows that ground structure right around the province, and that's the fairness and the balance that's in a point system like this, where every single district is treated the same and equally. And it's just great. And I think, as a party, it's onward and upward, and we'll leave here today as an energized caucus, ready to take on the next challenges.
So, Steve, I want to ask you about what sort of premier you think we're going to get from John Hogan. You've worked with him in cabinet for many years. How is he going to be different from Andrew Furey?
Yeah, well, Premier Designate Hogan will be my third premier that I've worked with, and every premier I think will be different. I've worked with John. Actually, I've worked with both Johns. So first, I'd like to congratulate John Abbott on a well-fought campaign. John is a great colleague as well, and a huge contribution to this province and what he brings to the table as well. But, what I've learned about John Hogan over the years, he's a very calm, well-thought-out individual. I think he will bring us together as a party as we go forward. Very thoughtful, very calm individual, takes advice. He's just going to bring what we need right now, that stand-up type of person that's going to be methodical in their thoughts and put Newfoundlanders and Labradorians first.
I thought it was interesting in his speech. There were a couple of different themes that we heard there. Obviously, the deal with Quebec and trying to get a new deal on Churchill Falls. That's something he's going to have to finalize. Trump and the tariffs. A lot of talk there about how we'll support. How difficult a situation is he walking into? Because these are some pretty meaty sort of existential issues that he's dealing with.
Yeah, I think he is, absolutely. And I think, most of our premiers don't walk into circumstances because there's always challenges before us. But I think what John will bring to this job, with his character, with his background in law, for somebody who's going to finalize the agreements on the Upper Churchill, I think he's the right person at this time to bring his experience, and we're going to use his experience and our experience as a government for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador.
And we saw that with John Hogan during his campaign. I mean, he spoke to the fact that when he was Attorney General, he had involvement in the definitive agreements, the MOU,
yep.
And then he wants to see through the definitive agreements. And I think that Hogan's going to bring that experience to bear in a very positive way. And I also think, though, that you're seeing the Team Canada approach, with the provincial premiers meeting so much. And I think that it's so important right now with what's going on globally that, you have a strong premier that can bring the diplomacy that's needed right now with Trump-ish.
Okay, well, we'll have lots of more time to chat, but one person we definitely want to hear from, who's with Carolyn Stokes right now, is the second place candidate, John Abbott. Carolyn.
Yes, Peter, John Abbott is joining me now. And Mr. Abbott, congratulations on your campaign. I know this was not the outcome that you were hoping for. What's your reaction?
Oh, thank you, Carolyn. Well, personally disappointed, obviously, but I am happy for John Hogan and his campaign and for the Liberal Party. He now has a strong mandate and somebody that I'm more than willing and wanting to work with so that we can elect a new majority Liberal government in the next election.
How are you feeling about the level of support that you received today? You ran, this is your second time running, you got 34% of the vote last time, 22% this time. How are you feeling about that?
Well, we were anticipating, obviously, a higher vote count for us. Obviously, it didn't happen. So obviously, my messaging didn't resonate as much as we thought it had. But look, that's now history. We're going to move forward. And really working with John Hogan is something I'm looking forward to doing. I plan to run in the next election, and we will again form the next majority Liberal government. Look, it's been a great opportunity. Not many people get to do that, and I've been very supported by my family, my wife in particular. We travel right throughout the province, got great reception, but here we are. The vote is in, the count is done, and now we have a new leader.
So you're going to run in the next election. You're going to be sticking around. What are your hopes and expectations going forward?
Well, again, in terms of the platform I put out there, I certainly will make sure that seniors are heard, their voices heard, more so around the cabinet table if I'm so selected, making sure that we make sure there's no senior in poverty, more housing, obviously. So there are still very important issues. And as I said earlier, as a Liberal, there are values I think we can all aspire to as a Liberal government.
And I'm curious, I understand that you were considering running federally in the federal election, but ran in this race instead. Do you have any regrets not going federal?
No, really not. This was certainly a passion of mine to be Premier. I said I would put my name forward, and I'm glad I did. And on the federal side, we have some great now federal Liberal MPs, and I look forward to working with them.
And what do you think the new Premier and your party will need to do to win the next election? We just came out of the federal election. We see some conservative strength growing in rural Newfoundland and Labrador, so the Liberals clearly have some work to do there. What needs to happen to win the next election?
Well, I think we have to have a very ambitious, progressive policy agenda that really speaks to all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. So obviously affordability issues are uppermost in people's minds, but how we're going to move forward on healthcare and education and growing our economy. So I think they're the pieces that will have to come together in a policy agenda to drive voters towards the Liberal Party.
Well, John Abbott, thank you so much for speaking with me. Congratulations once again on your campaign, and I'm sure we will be speaking with you again soon. Thank you so much. All right, I'll throw it back to you, Peter.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Carolyn Stokes on the floor there with John Abbott. I want to bring it back to the panel here and get your perspective, because I guess a good sign, he said he is running in the next election. He could have taken his ball and said, if I don't have the top job, I'm out of here. What do you make of that?
Yeah, that's no surprise to me. I've known John Abbott now for quite a number of years, and that man is, has great integrity. His heart is in the Liberal Party of Newfoundland and Labrador. He is a great contributor to our province, make no mistake. He brings a wealth of knowledge, wealth of experience to our party, and it's absolutely, as a member of that caucus, I'm absolutely delighted to hear John confirm this afternoon that his name will be on the ballot.
And what do you think then John Hogan needs to do in order to make sure that John Abbott and his supporters feel included? And, last thing, with a vote like that, you're unlikely to see a big rift in the party. This isn't Grimes' effort kind of days, but what does he need to do to reach out to those supporters?
I think he'll start to do that. He's a team builder, and we've seen it in John Abbott's remarks there a moment ago. John Abbott, threw his support back behind Premier Hogan, and we'll come out of this room today as Liberals. We always have. We'll come out of this together and united as we go forward for the next election.
Megan, what are your thoughts on that party unity and what needs to happen?
I think it's critical right now because we're in an election year, and I fully believe the party now is going to. And I think the party is mobilized and it will be prepared for the election. I also think. From my experience of knowing John Hogan for many years, he's a party person, and he's been years ago, as Judy Morrow alluded to, he served on the board of the party, so he knows what's necessary for election planning, and I'm so happy to see him at the helm, and I think that he will unite everyone within caucus, including, of course, John Abbott, and I too am very happy to hear that Abbott's going to reoffer, because he's brought tremendous integrity, and he's been such a strong member of caucus for the last 5 years, and I'm glad to see him reoffer.
Well, and it'll be interesting because it was a very narrow win that he had last time around when he did defeat NDP leader Alison Coffin. So, having someone with that profile running again in what has traditionally been an NDP territory, if you want to hold the seats, it helps to have someone who.
Absolutely, and while I've got to know John Abbott over the last 4 years, he's a great constituency politician, and he's been a very strong representative from that district, and I think the people of that district will see that when we go back to the polls.
One of the big questions that I'm going to have for him, and I suspect a lot of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have for him, is when is he going to call an election? I know you haven't had a chance, you're not going to have any great insights, but Give me an idea. What are the pros and cons of spring versus fall election? What are the things that need to be considered?
There's been so much happening politically the last few months.
Yeah. I know
we started early January with the announcement of the MOU. And then I think the narrative has been all about what's been happening nationally and internationally. And then Premier Fury steps down, and now we're into this leadership campaign provincially that we've just gone through, but also federally. I mean, there was a leadership, there was the election, so a lot happening politically. But with Carney's recent win, there could be some momentum that could, maybe be incentive to go earlier. But also, I think that there needs to be some time for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador to get to know John Hogan as our leader and our premier as well.
And also time for the volunteers who just ran a federal election campaign, who just ran a leadership campaign. Yeah. They got to be tired.
Absolutely. And I think, again, one thing, if I know John Hogan, he's really going to take a deep breath. He's going to assess the situation we're in. Exactly to your point, we just came out of a federal leadership, a federal election, now this campaign. So, we'll take some time, I think, and reflect. And, all I can tell you is that when he decides he's going to call an election, we as Liberals, we're going to be ready to go.
Well, we heard from the new premier. Let's hear from a former premier. Carolyn Stokes is standing by on the floor with a familiar face. Carolyn?
Yes, Peter. I have a former Liberal Premier Dwight Ball with me, who stepped down in 2020. You've been out of the public eye for about 5 years now. This must bring back some memories for you. What do you think about the outcomes?
A lot of great memories this afternoon for me in a very similar, situation a few years ago, back in 2013. But it's just refreshing. I love to see change. I think the succession that we've seen now with John Hogan, it's such a real good unifying campaign that both John Abbott and John Hogan put into the last few weeks. This is great news for the Liberal Party as they prepare for the next election.
When you were voted as Liberal leader in 2013, you didn't have the added responsibility of becoming premier at that time as well. What is your advice for John Hogan going forward as premier?
Well, enjoy the moment. It will go by very fast. I think Premier Fury said that last night in his leaving message, and for me, I look back at it as a very rewarding point in my time. And so that would be some advice to him, and listen to people. And I know he will, because that's the type of individual that he is. I work with both the Johns through my political career, and either way, coming out today, I think we've got a great leader and a great position for the next election.
And Liberals have been in power since 2015, since you were elected in. So there have been 2 premiers and now a 3rd premier. We have a provincial election coming up 10 years in. Voters tend to get antsy when it comes to wanting change when you get to the 10-year mark. What do the Liberals need to do to convince voters to stick with the Liberals in the next election?
Well, just like voters always look for change, the party has been looking for change, as well. So the party has been refreshed now at least twice now. For the 3rd time, you'll see lots of new candidates that will come forward, for the next election. People are ready and willing to step up. So that's the kind of change that we want to see. The Liberal Party will evolve where the province evolves, and I think that's the change that we're going to see. We'll see a brand new Liberal Party with a new agenda, now with a new leader.
Mr. Ball, you haven't been in the public eye for about 5 years now. I'm just wondering, do you miss it?
Do I miss? Yeah, I miss people. I mean, I love this province. I love to travel around Newfoundland and Labrador, which I do quite regularly. But if there's one thing I miss about politics, it's definitely the stories from the great people that we have in our province.
Well, Dwight Ball, thank you so much for speaking with me. There you have it, Peter. Former Premier Dwight Ball. I'll throw it back to you.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Interesting to hear from the former premier, who's been fairly quiet. Like, he hasn't... Unlike some former premiers, he hasn't been popping up with his own opinions about how things have been running in the province, over the last couple of years. One thing he talked about in terms of getting ready for the next election, the federal election. We saw the Conservatives doing really well outside the overpass, picking up 1 seat, almost picking up a 2nd seat. How much do you think that will influence what the provincial party needs to do if it wants to keep the seats it has outside of the overpass especially?
Yeah, I think we have to recognize that, and I think, in assessing, where we make our policies and how we go forward. But we've been very clear over the last number of years. We differentiate ourselves when we need to from Ottawa. It's Newfoundland and Labrador first. And, I'm sure that as we go forward, Premier Hogan will make sure, it's Newfoundland and Labrador first approach, and, we'll certainly take that to the people of the province.
Okay, well, thanks for your insights. We're going to, we have the next Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, John Hogan, who's going to be joining me now on the set. 47 years old, the second Premier we've had who's under the age of 50. He was a lawyer, as we heard in his speech earlier today. He was talking about, he's been part of the party back when it was unpopular to be a Liberal, when they just had a couple of seats within the legislature. And he's seen the party grow to form government. Last time he was involved in the leadership race, he was behind the scenes. He was helping Andrew Furey win that leadership race, but this time that victory is all his, and he's now going to have a chance to put his own stamp on the Liberal Party, on the province, as he gets sworn in and takes office. So we'll have a chance to find out just exactly what is it that he plans to do with this new position. And we are, I think we're just we need a microphone for you. So we're just getting him wired up there with a microphone so that we can have a quick chat with him. But 77% of the vote, that's more than Andrew Furey won with in the last election. So clearly a sign that the Liberal Party coalesced fairly strongly on the new leader. And so we'll have an opportunity to ask him about just how he plans to make sure that that party stays united heading into the next election, and how he'll be able to put his stamp as the new Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador. Of course, he's not the Premier yet. He does still have to be sworn in, so for now, he's Premier designate. And let's thank you so much for joining me, Premier designate.
How are you?
First of all, just what's going through your head now that you've had this long race and you've won?
It's pretty overwhelming. I mean, when you announce that you're going to run in any campaign, you sort of put your head down, you make calls, you knock on doors, you visit communities. You don't really think about this day actually getting here. And now that it's here, I'm so proud of the work that we did. I'm so proud of my campaign team. And I'm so proud to be a Liberal. This is not my first leadership campaign at all. I've been around for a long time in the back rooms.
But it's different when it's your name on the ticket.
It's absolutely different. That's why it's really a bit overwhelming. You encourage the other candidates to run, you do the work for them, and to see people do it for me, you never really expect that, and it's amazing to see, and it's very heartwarming and touching. And now to be here as a successful candidate for the leadership of the Liberal Party, it's great.
You were fairly close with the former Premier, Andrew Furey. You ran his campaign last time around. But how is the leadership under you in the Premier's office, how are you going to be different from him?
Yeah, so, we're all different. We come from different places. We have different backgrounds. I'm a father with a lawyer who has 2 kids here. That's the primary focus that makes up who I am and what I want to focus on as Premier. We have different leadership styles, of course. But I have been part of this government for 4 years, Premier Furey for 5 years, of course. And I think he's really laid the groundwork for where we need to go next. I'm very fortunate to have that as a Premier stepping into someone's shoes who's really set us up for a lot of success in the next coming number of years and decades. You look at the Churchill Falls deal, you look at the health accord, it's going in the right direction. As I said in my speech, people still have some frustrations with health in this province, but things are trending in the right direction. So we need to continue working on what Premier Furey has done, and that's, I think, what the Liberal government is going to do.
You mentioned a couple of the issues there, but what is top on your list when it comes to when you walk into that office? What do you sort of see as your first on your to-do list?
Yeah, so as I said, people's priorities are my priorities. And what I heard over the last 2 months was to focus on healthcare, to continue doing that, to fill the gaps that we still see across the province, whether that's ambulance delays, not having a family physician or access to primary care or long waits in emergency rooms. Healthcare is always going to be an issue for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians and Canadians, and it should be. Very fortunate to live in this country where we have access to that health care and we don't have to pay for it or worry about our mortgages rather than our health care. So we need to continue to keep our eye on that. The MOU is not a generational change, a multi-generational opportunity for us here in Newfoundland and Labrador. The plan is to get those agreements signed by April of 2026. That's less than a year away. So we have to really work very, very hard to meet that target. And then to see the funds that will come in, I mean, that check will be backdated to 2025. So that's
makes a whole lot,
such a great opportunity. Absolutely. It's not just about it being easier. It's really about the pain and the heartache and the anger that we've had over the past 5-6 decades about Churchill Falls. as I said, it's an opportunity for us just to sort of lift that off our shoulders and move forward. Of course, the economic benefits will be great, but we need to manage that as well. We need to make sure we're ready for those projects, make sure we're ready not only economically and structurally and work-wise, but socially as well.
I want to ask you about the next election. There's going to be one this year, but there's been a lot of debate about whether or not it'll be a spring or a fall election. Where is your head at right now? Do we need a spring election?
My head right now is in this room. As I said, I put 2 months into trying to get to this date, and we've gotten to this date, and then we move to what's next. You never get ahead of yourself in politics. So we'll get up tomorrow and see what next week looks like in terms of a transition team and get a new cabinet sworn in. Of course, we still have a week in the House of Assembly to get the budget passed, so we'll work hard at that. And I'll certainly look forward to meeting with my caucus and getting their opinions, their advice on when the election should be. But I mean, there's not a lot of flexibility. We're months away. We're not talking about 12, 13 months. It's literally going to be between now and October.
I want to ask you about the caucus because John Hogan got, around a quarter of the support. John Abbott. Too many Johns. Got about a quarter of the support. He had some of the caucus behind him as well. What are you going to do to try and reach out to those people and make sure that they feel included in your government?
So I've continued to talk to all caucus members throughout this 2 months, and I'm sure John Abbott has as well. And as you heard today, I mean, people have said that this was a really nicely run leadership campaign. There was no internal squabbles. There was no external squabbles. It was very smooth. And I think, we've all really been a tight caucus over the last 4 years. We've gotten along together. We've certainly raised issues with each other in terms of where the province should go, but we all settled on where we should be as a party and as a province. And those conversations happened over the last 2 months. They're friends of mine. You had to pick. That's politics. That's democracy. That's a good thing. But we'll all come together now this evening and do what's right for Newfoundland and Labrador. That's to show who we are, which is a group that's very much together and very much focused on Newfoundland and Labrador.
I must say, this is the first time I've seen a Premier-designate speech that was upstaged by their children. You do have a young family, and we heard from the outgoing Premier about how hard that was to manage having kids and a job that takes more than 100% of your time. How are you preparing for that?
So, I thought about this when I decided to run. My previous jobs as a lawyer, as a cabinet minister, took up a lot of time as well. And I always made sure to balance my family life with my work life. And I'm not the only one in Newfoundland and Labrador who does that. Lots of us are busy. Lots of us have demanding jobs, and lots of us have families. And we all need to find a way to balance that. And I'll continue to do that as Premier. My focus will be on the people of this province, but also making sure that, my family still remains very, very important to me. As I said when we were being asked questions on stage, people had suggested, be careful, maybe you shouldn't do it because you have young kids. And my answer was, the young kids is why I want to do it. I want to do it for them. I want to do it for other people's children. We want to do the right things to make sure that their generation and future generations continue to prosper here in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Well, John Hogan, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm sure you've got lots of people who are going to want to chat with you. So thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And that is John Hogan, who is Premier-designate of Newfoundland and Labrador. Let's head down to Carolyn Stokes, and she's got a cabinet minister with her.
Yes, Peter, I have Fred Hutton with me right now, Minister of Transportation, Infrastructure and Rural Economic Development. So, Mr. Hutton, big support for John Hogan today. What do you make of this outcome?
I'm not overly surprised by it, of course, because I had publicly endorsed John Hogan. Look, both of those Johns are very capable. Worked very closely with them over the last year and a bit since I've been in cabinet, but even before that when I was working in the Premier's office with Premier Fury. But I supported John Hogan because, if you watched him today, and not that John Abbott isn't empathetic towards people, but John Hogan has the perspective of having run a small business, his law firm outside. He's got that sort of public or private sector experience. A family, he understands the restraints that are on families now and the pressures, and we've worked very closely together and had a lot of good chats, and so that's why I endorsed John. So I think that after this is all said and done, we'll all be working together anyhow, but this was a great process, and I think the end result today, I'm happy with it.
And John Abbott has said that he will be sticking around and plans to run in the next election. Just wondering how you think a Hogan government will be different from the Fury government.
Well, look, I have this really unique perspective of coming from media, covering politics for 32 years, and then getting into the Premier's office from the get-go when the Premier got elected. and realizing how much I didn't know about what went on in government. And somebody texted me, an old colleague, and said, "You don't know what you don't know till you get in there." I will say this about Premier Fury. I've worked with a lot of people over my years, and that guy has like 2 or 3 gears that the rest of us don't have in terms of energy. John does as well, though, John Hogan. He's got a really critical mind that when you talk about topics, he just brings up the questions that you would automatically, not automatically think about. And I think that, one of the other reasons I endorse John is because I never thought in my life that I would see the Churchill Falls Agreement, a redraft of that, a memorandum of understanding. I honestly didn't think we would. I thought when we got a little bit closer, they might want to do it before 2041. And I think having a lawyer in that seat right now is critical as they try to reach the final agreement. And having John's eyes on that paper at all times with his legal background, I think is really super important for us right now. It is a game changer for this province when you think about $227 billion that could come into the economy. I mean, in the department that I'm in right now in transportation and infrastructure, there are so many needs. We have almost 10,000 kilometers of lane roads, so you have to double that. There's 1,300 bridges. We've got about 1,000 buildings that we're responsible for, hundreds and hundreds of other structures. I mean, it's just, there's so much in need. We're such a huge province geographically and spread out, of course, so the need is there, and that money, I think, is needed. That's why I think John Hogan is the best person for the job to take us not just to the next election, but also, to April 2026 when we're supposed to have those final agreements signed.
And John Hogan has been in government cabinet minister for the past 4 years, but I feel like a lot of voters may feel like they don't really know him very well. He has the support of the Liberals in the party, but what does John Hogan need to do over the next few months to sort of introduce himself to the public, get ready for this upcoming election, and help people get to know him a bit better?
Well, part of this process, while it was people, it wasn't just Liberals, it was people who signed up to vote. Anybody could potentially sign up to vote. But I think that, it's what we refer to as the summer barbecue circuit, right? And he will traverse this province again. And I have done that with Premier Fury multiple times. This is a very large province, as you know, to cover, not just from a news media perspective, but if you want to get to all these small communities, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. And I think that John he knows what, I had a chat with him. I said, your family is going to, be waving goodbye to you a little bit over the next couple of years, and definitely in the lead up to the general election. But I think that that's really what he's got to do. I mean, we're going to be a united party, and I think that our Premier designate, John Hogan, has got to spend a bit of time on the road again, introducing himself to people across Newfoundland and Labrador. But I think he's up for the task.
Does that mean that you think that this is going to be a fall provincial election, or do you think it might go to the polls sooner rather than later?
I have no idea. I think that, we've just come through the leadership, we've just come through a federal election, and I really have no idea. I guess once, Premier Designate Hogan has a couple of days to think about it. I'm guessing, I have no idea. Like when I said that, the summer barbecue circuit, but I mean, he will be on the road until the election is called, and he'll need to get around again. And I mean, even when you're in that office without an election, you still have to travel around so much because people, I remember the COVID election that we did, driving to St. Anthony, just the two of us in a car, and getting to a room similar to the size of this or maybe half the size, and 12 people standing around 15 feet apart with masks on. Thankful. This is very different from 2020 when the Premier won and there was, I think, 46 people in the room at the Delta Hotel. Very different at the convention center, and there was very low fanfare. A couple of hundred people here today, several hundred people, all sort of jammed in, sort of old school, if you will. Yeah. So it's very different. And people now that we're through all that, they want to see you. I mean, virtual is great because it's easier, but it ultimately, and I think for me too, I learned so much myself traveling with the Premier through those 4 years and getting to see places in Newfoundland and Labrador. This is such a fabulous place. And you could hear the passion in his voice, and you hear his voice crack when he talks about getting to take his daughter to Labrador and how he's still learning about things, reconciliation, truth and reconciliation. Every day in this job is a learning experience, whether you've been here for 4 years or 40. And like I said, when I came into this job, even after covering the province for 32 years, there were so many things I didn't know about Newfoundland and Labrador, and things I didn't know about what was going on in the Confederation building.
I bet. All right, well, Fred Hutton, thank you so much for your insights on this. And I'm sure you're going to have a very busy time ahead as we wait to find out when the provincial election will be. Back to you, Peter. Thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn. And one of the key questions I have about the provincial election is there was so much invested in the Andrew Furey brand. Like the by-elections, it wasn't Liberal, it was Team Furey. So how does the party rebrand itself now with a new leader? Megan, what do you...
I think it's ultimately up to the leader, like the branding of the party, and the leader can set, direction on that. And I think maybe part of that in the last number of years was perhaps maybe some efforts to distance a little bit when the federal Liberals were, a little bit.
Yeah. The anti-Trudeau had a bit of a spillover to the provincial as well.
Honestly, I think that's part of it. But I think everyone understands that the provincial Liberals are aligned with our federal Liberals in probably a different way than the Conservatives even. I think there's a stronger alliance there. So
yeah, because we saw the Premier actually out campaigning and endorsing on the federal level, whereas Tony Wakeham was a lot more hands-off, didn't really want to, have those same ties with the federal party.
Yeah. So and I think when I think about Hogan and his background in the party, I think he's when he was on the party board, it actually was united with the federal board. So which is different now. We're separate boards, but I think Hogan would have a lot of affiliations with the federal Liberals. So we'll see what take he would like to do with the party branding. But I think it's ultimately his prerogative to do.
So Steve, what do you think? Hogan's heroes? You go with...
No, I think every leader is such an integral part of a party that they are a huge part of the brand. And strategies from time to time, you use different strategies. To Megan's points. So John Hogan and I and Megan, we've been Liberals for a long time, and I can assure you, that we will be knocking on doors later this year as Liberals. And, John Hogan will bring his own stamp to the party, and I look forward to that.
Okay, let's head back to Carolyn. She's got a lineup of cabinet ministers. Another one there. Carolyn, who do you have with you?
Hi, I have Justice and Public Safety Minister Bernard Davis with me. So you came out in support of Hogan early on. What do you think of this result?
Well, I think it's a fantastic testament to the hard work and dedication that John and Premier-designate Hogan put into this campaign and the great team that he surrounded himself with. It's going to be great working with him. I've had a pleasure working with him for the last 4 years in Cabinet and caucus, and I look forward to the next 4 to 8 years working with him as Premier of this province.
What kind of a leader do you think he'll be?
He'll be a great leader. He'll be someone that takes advice from others. He'll be someone that works with community groups. I've seen him work. He's a very caring individual. He understands what we need to be focused on for development of the economy, where we need to go with Churchill Falls. He's a very competent minister from the times we've worked well with each other, and he's a very big player in our previous administration. Now, under his leadership, it's going to take us to the next level, and I look forward to being part of that and seeing what heights we can reach as a team.
And, we have a provincial election coming up sometime before October. What do the Liberals need to do to win this next election?
I think we just got to continue to work for the people that we represent, and making sure that we listen to the concerns they've brought forward to us. We've seen the federal election just this past week send the Liberals back in a very strong mandate. We've done some really good work in this province. There's more to be done for sure. We know that there's individuals that struggle with, in my current role, public safety. People want to feel safe in their communities, and we're working very hard to do that. We've made some significant investments this year that is going to pay off in the next couple of years in seeing how we develop those initiatives. I look forward to what comes next for us as a people, but we've just got to listen to what the people are saying to us, try to work as hard as we can for those people, and deliver where we can with cost of living and public safety issues.
Okay, well, Bernard Davis, thank you so much for your thoughts on that. I'll throw it back to you, Peter.
Okay, we're wrapping up. We only have about 30 seconds for each of you left. I just want your final thoughts. What are you going to be looking for from the Premier in the next couple of days? Megan.
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see how Hogan has indicated that he might want to restructure some of the ministries. So I'm sure that that's going to be a priority of his to establish his cabinet. There's also going to be some transitional things, of course, with his staff. And then I'm looking forward to him taking the helm and get formally, of course, sworn in. And I think and from the party perspective, I'm very excited that we're in this place. I think the party feels like it's in a really good place right now in advance of an election. So.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be an extremely busy week for the Premier Designate, for us as a party, for us as a caucus. We're back in the House of Assembly on May the 12th, so that's about 1 week from now. So there's a lot of stuff that has to get in place over the next 10 days, 8 to 10 days. So looking forward to what will be a busy weekend, looking forward to continuing forward.
Okay, well, thank you very much, both of you. Megan Reynolds, former president of the party, and Steve Crocker, who is a provincial cabinet minister. And that about wraps it up. Carolyn, let's bring you back in here for a couple of thoughts. What are you taking away here?
Well, Peter, the big question for me is going to be when will the provincial election be called? So not a whole lot of clarity on that tonight, but we will find that out soon. And also how Hogan presents himself as a person in the public.
Thanks, Carolyn. That's it for us from the Convention Center. Have a good afternoon.